Welcome to the Real Life Buyer podcast. In this podcast, you will hear interviews with business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, authors, and technical specialists in their field. These professionals will hasten your development, accelerate your career, and broaden your business know-how. Now, introducing your host, Dave Barr, interviewing with a purchasing twist.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Life Buyer. As a professional purchaser, my DNA has a built-in instruction to seek, evaluate, and challenge prices. So when I came in contact with my next guest, Per Sjofors, aka the Price Whisperer, I just had to connect and welcome him to this show. Having held numerous C-suite positions, including that of the CEO and vice presidents of marketing and business development, Per founded his company, Sjofors and Partners Inc, in May 2007, and has not looked back since. Per is a thought leader and author in everything pricing and how companies can use pricing to drive higher growth, sales volume, and profit. So in this podcast, I want to uncover more about the strategies, methods, and tools Per shares with his clients and see how they impact on professional procurement thinking. So without further ado, I welcome Per onto the podcast. Hi, Per.
Thank you very much, Dave. I'm excited to be on the show, and I hope I can bring some level of value to you and the audience.
I certainly expect so. Certainly having read your book, which we'll discuss at depth now, I've got no doubt that will be the case.
Yeah.
So let's start. Obviously, many people may not be aware of yourself. And for a young person to dream of becoming a numbers guy is one thing, but let alone becoming an expert on pricing strategies. So can you explain a little bit about your story as to how you gravitated to this line of work and research?
Yeah, what happened was that for the audience and looking at my name, you can see that I'm actually Swedish from start, but I ran a couple of companies in Europe. One out of Zurich in Switzerland and one out of London. And then I'm in the mid-90s, I moved here to Los Angeles, where I'm still reside. And here I came here to establish a division of a fairly large public company. And after that, I had another 4 CEO positions. And in these instances, we did experiments with pricing. And some of those experiments were very, very successful, meaning that next quarter revenues are up 25% or so. Some were real duds, and most of them were kind of inconclusive. So, and what I had read about pricing and learned about pricing in business school was so academic and so theoretical that it didn't help us in any way understand why some of those experiments worked. And then, like you said, when I started my company, I did so because I was, I felt that I was too old and too opinionated to be a hired gun. So it was time to start my own shop, if you like. And I took that interest in pricing and developed a process that makes every pricing experiment a success. And so that's the story. And that process is most companies are using very simplistic pricing strategies and they have no real process of setting price. And so I developed a process that is all based on understanding willingness to pay of a client, but not only that, specifically understanding what benefits they are willing to pay for. Right?
Yeah. Let's dive a little bit more into the process. And from what I've seen, obviously doing my research, the process answers 4 fundamental questions. And let's just make sure I've got this right. So are we targeting the right customers first? Secondly, are we offering something that buyers really want? Thirdly, are we marketing ourselves most efficiently? And then on the 4th one is, are we leaving money on the table? So can you walk us through these and explain your thinking here?
Yeah, the first one, most companies do some kind of customer segmentation or customer targeting, and they do that targeting almost always by guesses and gut feel, right? Or they have guesses and gut feel. I have a hunch that this is the people we're going to focus on, and the cornerstone of our process, if I just quickly go through that, because it's the answer to all of these questions, is to do willingness to pay research. And in that willingness to pay research, and this is conducted online. It's an online polling where buyers and potential buyers to a company get to answer a whole slew of questions. And that creates a prediction of sales volume and revenue at different prices. And there's a couple of things that is really important to know for a selling organization. And that is that the price that generates the highest sales volume and the price that generates the highest revenue is never the same. Never. So the price that generates the highest revenue are always higher. And that means that as a selling organization, you can trade off sales volume versus profits. And I almost always recommend profits versus sales volume. And the reason is very simple. The reason is that with more higher profits, the selling organization have more money to spend on product development or marketing. So to better serve their customers. So, but to answer your question, the targeting then comes from segmentation. And with segmentation, what I mean is to take the initial prediction of sales volume and revenue and split it by different customer categories so that a company can say, this is the customer category that has the highest need for the product or service that we have, right? And because they have the highest need, they are also willing to pay higher prices. And then we do the same thing with product features and functions and benefits. So we can say, these are the features and functions that people need the most and therefore are willing to pay higher prices for. And that helps the company to make sure that they have the best possible product to service, product to market fit, right? And with marketing, we understand how what marketing channels and messages are most effective in driving demand as a predicted sales volume for a seller. And finally, how we can assess how to create a pricing strategy that leads to the lowest possible sales friction and again the highest revenue and profits. And what I mean with the lowest sales frictions, certainly if we're talking about a B2B kind of environment, is to understand how should pricing be stratified in such a way that it makes most sense for the buyer, right? Not for the seller. Is it going to be stratified in such a way? Is it by number of users or different use cases or different attributes like locations or industries and so forth? And are these different strata, do they have different needs and so forth? So
okay, so if I just pick on two extremes then. So if one is looking at a luxury goods manufacturer, be it for a high performance vehicle or clothing or handbags, things like that, then obviously the price will be fairly high, but the volume relatively low. And
yes.
So you're focused on that type of customer that wants something unique, extremely high quality. She says almost like a rarity. It's not obviously all over the street. No, very few people have them. So that exclusivity obviously goes hand in hand there. The other extreme being the supermarkets, stack it high mentality, very low profit margins, but you need the volume. So those are the two extremes that we're looking at here then.
Yeah, I have a possibly funny example on the very first one. Just when I started the company, a Swiss watchmaker whose name escapes me made a series of watches from steel that was recovered from the Titanic, and those watches were priced at $375,000 each. And they sold out the series in 2 weeks. So they were not high enough.
Exactly. Extremely exclusive, obviously. But as you say, they could probably have charged $500,000 given the right thought process.
Yes,
I guess
correct.
they underestimated the perceived value in this case.
Correct. And it's also related to this is also to understand what business you're in. And since we're on that watch thing, I read an interview with, this is maybe 5 years ago, I read an interview with the CEO of Rolex. And Rolex, by the way, was actually founded in the UK and by a German guy or Austrian guy. And then eventually he moved the company down to Switzerland in the 1920s. But he was asked about the status of the Swiss watch industry, to which the answer was, I don't know. We are not in the watch industry.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, they're in the lifestyle industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, one of the things that jumps out at me is that if somebody has started their business at the extreme where they think of high volume and high profit, obviously we talked about the fact that if it's high volume, it's more likely to be a lower profit margin than the other way around. Now, would I be right in thinking that I've seen, certainly I'm into motorbikes as an example, I've seen some of the manufacturers of motorbikes bringing out special editions, numbered vehicles. Harley are kind of famous for a special edition. So their way of tapping into the higher price opportunities for low volume is to bring out a special with a unique paint job, a unique serial number, et cetera, et cetera. Is that their way of trying to break the mold a little bit, get away from high volume, low price, and move themselves, elevate themselves into the low volume, high price market?
Yes and no. The first of all, we have to realize specifically when we talk about cars and motorcycles and watches and stuff like that, you don't really buy it, or many people don't buy it for the pure utility value, but because they project something about your personality that you want to have projected, right? And because of that, these various special editions allows the buyer to project whatever he or she wants to project in a different way than the possibly more pedestrian sort of regular model. And because of that, willingness to pay goes up.
Right.
The other reason is, and one client of mine he told me this story. His name is John Larson. He was brand president for a couple of the brands over at GM. And he told me that during the 1980s, and first half of 1990s, the family car here in the US was a 4-door family car, was a Ford Taurus, right?
Yep.
And it was, at the time, it was priced at $18,000. And it became so synonymous with what a 4-door family car should cost, so that it sets a very strong reference price at that 18,000. And all the other manufacturers and Ford themselves tried to come up with cars that was more expensive of these 4-door family cars, and they could not. As soon as they crossed that line of 18,000, they didn't find many buyers, right? So the answer to this was something that Ford did. They came up with this Ford Taurus SHO, I think it's called. So it was the same family car with a bunch of plastic clad onto the to the body and a little beefed up engine and stuff like that. And it was sold at 26,000 or so.
Okay.
And the point was that every time somebody walked into a dealer lot looking for one of those pedestrian Ford Taurus, they were also exposed to the price of that special edition, right? And over time, and we talk about years here, over time, that more expensive price became the reference, right? And because of that, they were able to increase, they were able to cross that reference line of 18,000 and could suddenly start selling cars at higher prices.
Yeah. Is that effectively using like the anchoring model or theory?
Anchoring is always works, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So the next thing I've discovered is that you offer, it's interesting your words here, 7 easy steps to increase pricing. And I love that. Okay, as a buyer, I love to hear that. Now you're saying with the proper process in place, increasing prices becomes a breeze. Okay.
Yes.
And it goes on to say it even offers the opportunity to tighten the relationship, which is the interesting thing here as well. So
Yes.
pricing increases becomes a breeze, and you actually tighten the relationship between the company and the customer. Please talk us through that.
Yeah. First of all, you do want to increase your price, or you do want to make sure that your prices are based on willingness to pay. And if a company is underpriced, it eventually will have, if it's way underpriced, it will not have the amount of resource that maybe its competitors have to continue to develop new and better product and better serve their clients. So first of all, the first is to find the price level that should be the right price level. The second is that, and what I have in that guide is a lot of it is how you communicate, and how a company communicate with its clients, and how a company communicate internally, and how a client or how a company train their own salespeople so that not only on the pricing, but so that the salespeople better understand the needs of the clients, so that salespeople can be better in guiding the client through to purchase the right thing, so to speak. And that's really what I mean with tighten the relationship between the buyer and the seller. Because if the two have a better understanding of what the needs are, that relationship can be better, because the seller can better serve the buyer.
Yeah.
And add more value, right?
Yeah. So it goes beyond transactional relationships into something far greater, where you're adding additional value to the customer.
Correct.
You don't hand them just a product and thank you very much, goodbye, sir. It goes well beyond that.
That's absolutely true. And I think, again, for your audience, it's we talk a lot about price increases here. And let me tell you a story, right? And this touched on the stack 'em high, sell them cheap note that you said. And there's a client here who what they have, I don't know if you have this in the UK, but we have in grocery stores, we have these pouches of ready-made drinks, like a margarita or a whiskey sour or something like that, And this is a new company that's coming out with a series of these ready-made drinks, and they are premium. They're using premium ingredients for some reason, or whatever that means. Sorry.
Yes.
And new started company, and Bob, who's the name of the founder of this company, the first contract he got with Ralph's, which is one of the big grocery store chains here, he was actually selling at a loss, and because the buyer could not appreciate the value of the premium ingredients in this particular product, right? So he sold at a loss. Means that this is a lose-lose proposition. Obviously, he could not continue to sell at a loss for very long. And once he stopped selling, the buyer would also lose another vendor, right? So it's a loss-loss proposition. Yeah. So we then went out to the marketplace and could specifically identify what end customers were willing to pay for the differentiators, that particular quality that Bob had in his product, right? So then when the first purchase contract were to be renewed, Bob had hard data with him to say that, in fact, Mr. Buyer, this is what people are willing to pay for the specific value that I bring in my product, as opposed to the value in all these other low-valued products. This is what people are willing to pay for the quality. He got the price that he needed. The buyer got a vendor that could stay in business, and a product where their dollar margin was far exceeding the dollar margin of these really cheap products. So suddenly it became a win-win, right? Just because you had that information. Everybody made more money.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously your book, and I'll just make sure people understand the name of the book, The Price Whisperer, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. Now, in that you share numerous examples like you're doing today, and thank you very much for that. I think it's so much better when people hear real examples. They can get their heads around it. I certainly can. And you've given a number of examples where you've revolutionized both product and service pricing. I'm quite interested to know, I think when people see something tangible like a product, perhaps they can understand how you can perhaps do something with the prices, perhaps in an easier way. It's more transparent. When you have a service business, how does that work? How is it just as easy to elevate the prices of the services you provide? How do you go about understanding what is the right price for a service?
Well, the process is the same. And we have to realize that we all buy something because we have a need, right? If we don't have the need, we are probably not going to buy. It doesn't matter how low the price is, right?
Yeah.
And that need is generated by something that I call the decision landscape. They're all different influencers that affects how we make our buying decisions. Obviously in the corporate world, right? And a product has certain benefits or resulting benefits. I mean, the resulting benefit of this is that I can actually take notes, right?
Indeed.
I mean, you know the saying. What's his name that came up with it? Oh, I lost the name. Anyway, you don't actually buy a drill, you buy a hole, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the benefit that you're actually buying.
Yeah, you want the outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the outcome is the same, whether it's a product you're buying or a service you're buying. So, and that goes into what's so important in what we do, that we can define what people are willing to pay for that outcome. And again, I think it's so important to repeat this for your particular audience, that I'm talking a lot about high increasing prices, but that's not the point. The point is to be able for a company to serve their customers better, to have a better mousetrap, whether it's a service mousetrap or a hardware mousetrap. It's that really providing a detailed understanding of what customers to a company really need, and when you can satisfy that need, you have earned the right to charge higher prices, right? And it's I mean, I just got off another call, a startup company. They don't have customers anymore, and they say, or they don't have customers yet.
Yes. Yeah.
And they said, how are we going to do this? I mean, we don't have a brand, we don't have even a product name, And I said, well, the way it's done is by benefits, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how you do it. So
Yeah. Now, I'm quite interested here. Now, a number of my audience will be business owners. Okay, they're going to be chomping at the bit to understand how to increase their profitability. But the key thing is, how on earth do they do the analysis? What information do they need? What questions should they ask? Where they need to go and research this? And they won't know necessarily how to do that in the way that you do. So if we take an example, you've just mentioned a company that is just starting off or wherever. If you're introduced to a client, what is the sort of the key steps that you take, and how long are we talking about, and how much cost are we talking about in order to give the customer or your client what they need to know to make the right changes?
Well, there's different level of details, right? The more detail, the more specific you can be, not only in the various advice, but also obviously in the pricing and so forth. And if we're talking about companies that are, current companies that are in business and have an ongoing business, to engage my company, it takes about 6 weeks.
Right.
And the cost is tens of thousands of dollars. Return on investment is normally a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And a couple of examples from earlier this year. One company we took from annual revenue of 200 million to 250 million in 3 weeks.
Very nice.
Another one we took from 15 million to 35 in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's because they were grossly underpriced. But if you're a startup and you don't have the kind of funds that is necessary to do the research that we do, there is a way you can understand the range of where you should put your prices. And the way you do this is that you go out to your marketplace, whatever that is, right? And you find at least 25 people to talk to that are potential buyers of your product or your service. And you ask them, first you describe your product or your service so they really understand what it is. Then you ask them 2 simple questions. You ask them, now when you know this product or this service, what would be a price that is so low that you wouldn't buy it because you don't believe it's going to deliver on the promise? And then the other question is, and what price is so high you wouldn't buy this product or service no matter how good it is? All right. And then you take the average of those low and high points of data, and suddenly you have a range of where your price should be. It should not be below this, and it should not be above that. What you can never, ever do is ask, how much are you willing to pay?
Okay. Key tip there.
It's the phraseology of those questions that are really key.
That's where the art is. And I guess even if they're somebody relatively new, to have your expertise, even for, just answering, please give me some guidance on some of the questions, that's going to be invaluable in itself. So if they ask the wrong question in the wrong way, you're going to get the wrong result.
Yeah, you get the wrong answer. Yeah. Now, if you're lucky enough so you can find 50 people to talk to and ask the same questions or even more, then you can start doing some segmentation. Then you can see, okay, people in this industry have a little higher willingness to pay than people in that industry. Or this size of companies have a higher willingness to pay than that size of companies. Meaning, and I'm equating willingness to pay here with a more pronounced need, right? So.
Okay, that's really quite interesting, that. And that's really great advice for people starting on their journey. So thank you for sharing that. Interesting question, perhaps. We've talked about the opportunity to increase prices. Have you been to clients, customers who said, oh, yes, we want to increase prices. But when you've done the research and the work and you evaluated people's feedback and everything that you do you ever find that actually they're overcharging at the moment? And there's some fundamental changes that need to happen in the business to enable them to get to the price they want to be. How do you work in those instances?
Well, first of all, it certainly happens that we find that people are overpricing. And I mentioned about price walls. And sometimes you end up with companies who price their product or service just above a price wall. So a small price reduction can double sales volume, right?
Yeah.
But what you're saying is very interesting, because in any company has a sort of gut feel about their market, about their market, and this gut feel comes obviously from conversations with their clients, but many times not all clients will tell everything they want to hear. They will withhold information. As an example, I go back to the sort of a car analogy. If I'm on a car dealer lot and I see they have the model I want, and I see they have it in white, which is my preferred color, will I say to the car salesman, if you have it in white, I'll give you another $2,000? No, I won't. I will say, oh, I see you have it in white, and if you take another $1,000 off the price, I'll buy it, right?
Indeed.
And that's human behavior, nothing else.
Yeah.
And this leads to that many selling companies don't fully understand the needs of the buyers. And when we do this particular research I'm talking about, we do this anonymously. So there is no way those that responds to this poll will know who our customer is. So they cannot withhold information because you withhold information because you want a better deal next time you buy, right? Because that's also human behavior. But what I'm getting at is that because companies have this sort of corporate gut feel of what the market wants, right? their marketing, sales, and product development are not always optimized. And when you inform that from research, you can change behavior in the company. And sometimes what we do is that we do a project that is aimed at a company's market, but then we rephrase the same project towards the company internally and make a gap analysis. So we have, this is what the market actually believes, and this is what the company believes about the market. And we find typically that there is about a 50% correlation, good correlation between the company and the market. And then there's another 50% where there is no correlation or little correlation. Now, what do you use this for? Well, you use it in internal training, of course. It means that you may have changed messaging, you may have had to change the benefits of the product or service and so forth,
Yeah. Interesting one, hopefully, for you here. We've talked about the smaller businesses, small to medium. Let's imagine now you have a client walks through the door, big business, sells globally. And you're going to look at one particular product, for example, that they currently sell on a global market. And after doing all your research, you find out that this is the right price that they should be charging for that product. Now, of course, being a big company, they'll be dealing with a huge range of clients from all around the world. And some of those clients will be small, and some of those clients will be other behemoths. Now, of course, a buyer in one of the behemoths, for example, like a supermarket, let's pretend it was that, will say, I'm expecting a heavy discount here, where the smaller guy, the salesperson, will obviously want to give a smaller discount. There's going to be a disparity there, potentially a very large range of discount structures. So having found and made the optimum price to sell the product at, how does your system deal with the salesman's dilemma now of dealing with big clients that expect big discounts versus the small clients that he's less willing to give discounts to?
Well, first of all, there are more issues when you sell to global companies than just that.
Okay, of course. I'm trying to simplify things as best as possible.
Yeah, with gray import and stuff like that, is other things. But the right answer is yes, when you have people, very large companies that buy very large quantities, you have to, they expect a much higher discount,
Yeah.
But I also think that the real solution here is to have product versions, right?
Right.
So you have a product version that is more aimed at the smaller company, and you have a product version that is more aimed at the really larger companies, and that will solve a lot of problems. It will solve these gray import problems and all different things.
Yeah, that's good.
So now, of course, it's a little more expensive to have more product versions, but it's well worth it. And it has to be real product versions. It cannot be just the same product with the labels in Spanish.
Yeah. Great. It's a great answer to a very difficult question, because I've got to emphasize to people listening, this isn't simple. But, if you go and buy the book, and I'll talk about the book in a little minute, there's huge opportunities here. And, I'm trying to condense a massive amount of fantastic research that you produce, Per, into a very short period of time. So please bear with us, listeners, here. But before I go on to one more question, because I can see the time's ticking here, how do people find out about your company, what you do, how they follow you? What's the best places to go and look for this?
You do a Google search for The Price Whisperer.
Yep.
You're going to find the book. You're going to find me. You're going to find my YouTube channel. You're going to find my company. It's really the easiest way, if nothing else, because I got such a wacky name that nobody can spell it.
Fantastic. Okay, I'll ask you one more question before we run out of time, particularly at this current moment where things are quite challenging in business and around the world. So obviously during this year, particularly, many companies are trying to increase prices. And obviously they're citing such factors as commodity cost increases, wage rises, fuel and energy increases, inflation, etc. So during such times as this, salespeople and businesses appear, in some cases, to be perhaps, I would say, abusing, maybe is one word for it, the situation, trying to take advantage of how things are at the moment to get an increase they may or may not rightly be looking for. And so, we often see price rises fast, but those same prices don't fall so quickly. We all know examples of that. So given your knowledge on the impact small changes possibly in price have on sales, maybe large ones, and profitability, what are your thoughts on such behaviors in the medium to long term when people act like this?
Well, I think and I think it's very important. I think there need to be ethics in pricing, right? And as a selling organization, you should never take undue advantage of situations, right? Having said that, now when we are in inflation and many companies are using inflation and increases in raw materials as a reason for increasing prices, we also have to realize that also give them more resources and more resources to deliver more product, more resource to develop better stuff, more resources to find more customers and so forth. So it's not all bad, But then, of course, there are certain industries that really take undue advantage of this and just pile cash, right? I'm not going to say which industries,
Sure.
but and that I think is highly unethical. Just like I remember, I said no to do a project a couple of years ago. This company who had a new revolutionary medical device that helps people with heart attacks. And in my view, that should be in as many hospitals as possible, right? That's not what the company's goal was. Their goal was, we want to sell as few as we can and make as much money as we can. So I said, no, thank you. It obviously they should sell, they should price it so they have a reasonable profit, but they should price it so that as many people as possible have the ability to use that product if need be.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great. That's a great thing to hear, Per. I think it's fantastic, and perhaps some people should listen to that a few times there. So I know we're now at a time, and I want to emphasize to the listeners here today. Now, I've read your book. I've only had a very short period of time to download it and read it. So as we mentioned earlier on, before we came on, I've got about 90% through, and I've got to share that I have no doubt that all business leaders, sales and purchasing professionals should give serious consideration to reading your work. I've been extremely surprised and pleased by the content that I've read. The information in there, that the book is loaded with valuable information. There's lots of examples, and there's a tremendous amount of knowledge that you've condensed into this product. So in my opinion, many people will significantly benefit from reading this. So if nothing else, I want to congratulate you on producing such an excellent piece of work. It's the one place, it's a book that I must say I've read that had an awful lot of information on this topic that I've not seen before. So very well done. Thank you for sharing that, Per.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Credit where credit's due. It's a superb piece of work, and I certainly think it's got tremendous value for people to take on board. And I'm certainly going to read it a few times. And I think you have to, because there is so much in there. So thank you very much for that. And again, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been an absolute delight.
All right, and thank you for inviting me. And like I said, I hope this was valuable for your audience.
I certainly think it will be. Thank you, Per. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So there's another Real Life Buyer podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it and it's given you some ideas and inspiration for greater action and achievement. If you are a purchasing or a supply chain professional, business owner or director, come and join my Facebook group, the Purchasing and Supply Chain Community Hub, a safe place to engage with like-minded, friendly people. See you soon. Bye.